Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Talkapolis, the social media TV network for your city.
Welcome back, everybody. Pit Pass. He's Larry Woody. I'm Joe Williams. So far, the attorneys have not shown up with a cease and desist order, so we're okay. Larry, we kind of got on a little bit there in the first segment. Hopefully, you know, we started at Daytona, we went out west to Phoenix, and then we went out west to Vegas. Now we come home to a little more of NASCAR's old roots. The race this weekend is in Bristol, Tennessee, at Bristol Motor Speedway. A facility that you remember with 16, 18, 22,000 seats that now seats 160,000 seats.
Plus suites.
Yeah.
Plus suites.
And the scary part about that is, for the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but an unusual situation, tickets are still available.
Well, being advertised. Joe, in the old days, not old days, 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't get a ticket to Bristol. I saw a story that a Bristol ticket was harder to get than an NCAA Final Four or a Masters ticket.
Yeah, at one point.
That's how hard they were. And people, Joe would leave them on their wheels. Somebody would wheel their Bristol tickets because ticket holders would have first option next year to renew their tickets, and everybody renewed them. So at one time they had about 30,000 on a waiting list, but nobody would give up their tickets. Now that's not a problem getting a Bristol ticket. It's almost like, again, the old days, Joe. When I first went to Bristol, fans could drive up the day of the race and get a ticket. You could go over to the ticket booth. Carolyn Carrier would be working there.
Yeah.
Dad Larry ran the track, and Carolyn and some of her people would be selling tickets at the booth. You'd buy a ticket and go sit down. It went from that, largely thanks to Gary Baker, our friend Gary Baker. When he took it over, he began to build it, explode it, put lights in, and it just exploded to the state's biggest sports event. You know, that's 3 Titans crowds we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, more than the UT crowd.
Yeah.
They surpassed University of Tennessee in terms of attendance stadium size.
Sure.
Having said that, the last couple or 3 years, though, the racing, I think, has dwindled a little, and it's like we're talking in an earlier segment. Race fans, Joe, they're smart. They know a bad race when they see a bad race. And Bristol hadn't been bad racing, but it hadn't been the old beat and bang, sparks flying Bristol races we used to see. And I think it's that simple. That's why, as the racing has dropped off on the tracks, the attendance has dropped off in the stands. Having said that, let's hope things perk up this weekend at Bristol.
Perfect storm kind of hit Bristol. First off, you had Larry. The racing kind of dropped off. Ticket prices kept going up. The economy started going bad. Yep. And the other thing, part of the racing falling off too was Bruton Smith, God love him, you know, he's not afraid to try things. And Speedway Motorsports, who owns the facility, came in, changed the racetrack.
Hoping to make it better.
Yeah, put that funky little what I call the half groove in.
Yeah. It was working, and they fixed it.
Exactly. Now they've gone back and fixed it back, supposedly to the way it was. Now, let's hope that then will
bring
that racing back.
Yeah.
But Larry, I think, I haven't said this too often before, Bristol takes a certain kind of racer.
A mentality
that goes with it. I'm on my soapbox now. And that mentality comes from years of running quarter miles like Highland Rim and half miles like Nashville and Mobile and Pensacola and Montgomery, the places where you go Saturday night in and out and you race and you rub and you bump. We really don't have that anymore. The drivers now are coming from sprint cars and open wheels and this kind of thing. The guys and the gals who work their way up aren't there. So when they get to Bristol, they get intimidated. I think that's one reason that Darrell was so good at Bristol, won 7. Earnhardt was so good at Bristol.
Yeah.
What, 6, 8 of those things?
Yeah.
Rusty Wallace is another one who was good at Bristol. And I think it just comes from, that's kind of the roots. And the drivers that are coming in now don't have the same roots as the guys who drove that track before and made great races.
I agree, Joe. I've said for years, I'm not sure NASCAR's problem. The fans complain about the lack of action on the track. I'm not sure the problem is the cars. I think it's more of the drivers who are driving the cars. They don't have those tough, rough, skin-knuckled, grease under the fingernails drivers that they used to have, and they're not that hungry. We know the stories about Bobby Allison, the old guys. They'd race from paycheck to paycheck. They'd hope to win enough on Saturday night or Sunday afternoon to get to the bank on Monday morning and deposit to cover the checks they'd written the week before to buy tires and gas. Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, these kids, they don't have to run to the bank on Monday morning and make a deposit from their race winnings to cover the checks and the tires and the car bill. I just don't think I know they're not as hungry as the old guys, and I think, Joe, that translates to less rough, tough racing on the track. Again, that's my theory. I'm sure people like Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Tony Stewart, some of these guys would say differently, but for whatever reason, the racing has dropped off. Now, whether it's the track, the cars, the drivers' attitude, whatever, but for some reason, Bristol hasn't been Bristol for the last 3 or 4 years, and I think that's why it'll be so fascinating, Joe, when they roll these newfangled Gen 6 cars out on a Gen 1 racetrack, which Bristol is, going back to the roots of stock car racing. Will the new era cars work on an old era track? And we'll find out this weekend, I guess.
Actually, I think this will be one place where these cars will show well. Yeah, I really do.
Those are kind of old-fashioned cars.
Yeah, and part of this problem, and we got to lay part of this at the feet of manufacturers and suppliers of parts. And here's what I mean by that. Don't take that the wrong way. But these guys have used NASCAR for so long, Larry, to find the best way to do things. How do we improve? I mean, you remember even 15 years ago, you go to Bristol, you're going to lose engines, you're going to have suspension parts break because it's so tough. They took the information on what happened then and they made a better mousetrap. My fear is, from a car standpoint anyway, and we talk about them and this, that, and the other, part of the car issue is these guys have now made maybe the best race mousetrap. There's not too many other ways that they can improve upon the mousetrap.
They've made it almost too good, Joe, because they've made such a good mousetrap, the mice are afraid to come near it.
Yeah.
My buddy Don Christopher made a good point Sunday when we were watching the so-called race at Vegas. He said, nowadays you'd have to explain to a new NASCAR fan what a blown engine is.
Yeah.
He said back in the old days they were going off like grenades around the track. And of course this would build excitement, keep the field bunched up, and now the cars are almost indestructible. And in a way that's good, you don't want your car tearing up, but another way it's bad because without the car failures, it does take away something from the race, because
Luck's
again, what is a blown engine? Most fans don't know. Yeah, and that was a part of the racing in the old days. How long could Cuckoo Marlin stay out there before his homemade engine blew and bunched the field up? Again, it's just they've almost made too good a mousetrap, as you said.
Yeah, if you will recall, Jody Ridley, the one race Jody won. Won at Dover. He was 4 laps down at one point. But as he was trying to make his way back through the field, the way he did it was all the leaders were blowing up. Next thing he knew, he's in front.
Yeah.
Coming from 4 or 5 laps down in a Junie Donlevy car to win the only Cup race that Jody won.
And that's still more exciting than sitting out and watching a gas mileage race and seeing who runs out of gas first. That's about as exciting as watching a
Speaking of exciting news for a former guest here, Mason Mingus out of Brentwood. Mason goes down to Mobile for the second ARCA race of the year. He ran in Daytona. He comes back, wins the pole on Friday, Saturday afternoon, hangs in there, finishes 4th. But here's what's really exciting to me, Larry. Mason Mingus, 17, 18 years old, out of Brentwood, Tennessee, now holds the ARCA points lead in a tie with 6 or 7-time 50-plus-year-old champion Frank Kimmel.
Mr. ARCA.
Mr. ARCA. Man.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't it great? But, talk
right,
about the two extremes.
Now, just the fact that he's tied for the points lead is a big news.
Deal, yeah.
Who he's tied with
it makes it even bigger.
Bigger news. I mean, it's Frank Kimmel is the best ARCA driver in history.
Yeah.
And here Mason Mingus is, our young friend from Brentwood. He's tied with Frank and has some pretty good runs so far. It's going to be fun. Joe, I think this will put some interest, particularly area interest, back in the ARCA series.
Yeah, which is not a bad series.
We used to have a lot of drivers from Middle Tennessee in the ARCA series. Now, it's very sporadic. But Mason, his plan is, I think he told us, to run the whole season, the whole schedule, ARCA series.
He will now.
So it's going to be fun to keep up with the ARCA series because now we've got somebody to follow. We've got Mason Mingus, like in the old days, in NASCAR Cup races, we could follow Darrell Waltrip, Sterling Marlin, Bobby Hamlin, all these people from the area. We don't have anybody anymore, but we do in the ARCA series. And Mason, he's a bright young driver. I think, Joe, the more I see of him, the more I follow him, the more optimistic I am. Convinced I am that he's going to make the big time. He's a bright young guy. He's well spoken. He's good looking, articulate, and he's obviously a talented race driver. I think Mason Mingus has the entire package, and it'll be fun to follow.
I just get excited about that.
I do too.
What
a good positive story.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the show's kind of a downer. NASCAR picking at Denny Hamlin, but racing's bad, so forth. All the problems we've got, and yet there's this bright, positive story about a great young driver from our area that's doing well. It's a good positive story when we need one.
And when we need one. Tell you what, there's another one coming up. Buddy Williams will be joining us next from up at Highland Rim Speedway as we get ready to take our final break of this show. And after that, in that final segment, Larry and I probably head down to the batter's box over on Hermitage Avenue. It's breakfast time. I'm buying this week, aren't I?
Did you buy last week? Of course not.
That was a dumb question.
You left your wallet at home, I remember now.
That's a dumb question. We'll be back. Stay with us on Pit Pass.